I'm Sarah Smith. I work in the Office of Community Partnerships, Planning, and Research. I have the honor of partnering with the Bucket Course Committee to bring you these sessions each and every Wednesday. A few reminders before we get started. If you can silence your phone, and make sure if you need to turn on your tea coil, please do so. And then if you can, at the end, help us put away chairs, that would be wonderful. But if not, that is okay as well. So today, very excited to welcome a few individuals from the city of Grinnell to give us updates as to what is happening here in our community. So I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker, Adrienne Hardin. Can you please help me welcome her?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yay, it's working. All right. So as Sarah said, my name is Adrienne Hardin. I am so glad to be back here. I was here about a year ago. Just as a reminder, I am the Communications and Community Development Specialist with the city, which means that I sort of have my hands in all of the projects that are happening citywide. I am the caretaker of those three creatures on the screen and a 120-year-old house in the north part of Grinnell. I need to update this slide because I'm going off on 2 gallons of coffee this morning, and I will try to talk a little bit slower than I did last time, but I can't make any promises. So the last time I was here, we had just launched the city's strategic plan, which is a 5-year all-encompassing plan that talks about what the city's initiatives are going to be, all-encompassing citywide. We had broken it down into 5 main points that we wanted to focus on for the next 5 years. And the thing about the strategic plan is, in my time with the city, I have worked on a lot of plans. I've been here for a year and a half, and I have had to review 2 housing assessments, a downtown assessment, a comprehensive plan, a land use plan, a master parks plan, a capital improvement plan, and a pavement and streets quality plan. And it seems like before I started, it felt like the city was always putting out all of these plans and what were they doing about them. So the strategic plan is when the city council and the mayor get together along with city staff, and they really take a look at those plans and break them down into tangible things that need to be done, and then create this all-encompassing plan that goes over top of it and says, these are what we're going to focus on, and these are what we're going to work on for the next 5 years. This is how we're going to spend our money, whether that be money from property taxes or from local option sales tax or from grants or from federal funding, any of that stuff. This is how we're going to spend the money, and this is how we're going to make this community better for the people who work and live here. So like I said, we had 5 major pillars in our strategic plan. I'm going to go a little bit out of order on updating you guys on these because one of them is already done. At the election last month, we successfully passed our renewal of the local option sales tax. Local option sales tax, because I don't want people to forget how important this is to our community, it generates about $1.6 million per year for the city. And that all gets reinvested locally. It goes toward your streets, it goes toward your library, it goes toward your parks, and makes those spaces better. It's a really dependable source of revenue, and it's one that isn't entirely contingent on the people who live here. It's the people who come to visit here for Grinnell College events, the people who are grocery shopping, who live in smaller communities in the area, the people who are using our roads and our libraries and our parks, but don't necessarily live here and pay property taxes, pay about 30% of that $1.6 million. So it's a very important thing. We're very excited that it got passed. It got passed by 86%, which my boss really loves to remind me that in Grinnell, you can't get 86% of the people to agree that puppies are cute. So thank you to everybody who came out, voted for it. We're very, very grateful. We're very excited to be able to start to continue moving forward and utilizing those funds in a way that make Grinnell better. The other pillar that we have is economic development. We are very, very focused on starting to lay the groundwork to create more industrial opportunities and opportunities for employers that have more jobs and can bring more jobs to Grinnell. We're working really closely with the Poweshiek Economic Development collaboration to help send out requests for information, requests for proposals to different industries that are looking to relocate in somewhere like rural Iowa that also has is conveniently located on the interstate between two metro hubs, has rail access. There's a lot of opportunity here, and so we're trying to promote that and lay the groundwork to try to bring some of those employers into town. We also updated our housing assessment this year, which is really interesting. It says that we still lack housing. Not that we lack housing, but that there is still a demand for more housing. And then pairing that with the economic development aspect, when you're trying to bring jobs, major employers don't want to relocate to a city that doesn't have housing for their employees. So it's kind of a catch-22, and we're trying to find the sweet spot where we have enough housing to attract employers, and we have enough employers to attract people to move here. And it's not as easy as it sounds, but we're working on it. This summer, the Iowa Economic Development Authority came to visit Grinnell. They spent 3 days touring our downtown, having focus groups, doing interviews with people. I know some of you in here were part of that process. And then they issued a 80-page study about what they thought were the great things that we were doing and our challenges and our room for improvement. There was not a lot of room for improvement. We were using it as a jumping-off point after spending the last 20 years on investing heavily in our downtown and beautifying it and helping to incentivize some small businesses to come in, things like that. And we were trying to figure out what the next step was. And the report came back with, we have an amazing downtown. It's active. There are people there. The farmers market, music in the park, the library. It's very thriving. The architecture is beautiful. And so a lot of the report just said, keep doing what you're doing. There were a couple of opportunities for growth. Those were filling some of the vacancies in storefronts downtown, helping with some of the signage and wayfinding. There's a lot of public parking downtown that people don't actually know about because there's no signage that says, hey, you can park here overnight for free. So trying to make some of those spaces a little bit clearer to people who are visiting or even who live here and aren't aware of the opportunities that are available. So that whole report, if you're interested, Brent, is on the city's website. You just have to search for it. And then our next pillar is streets and infrastructure. And I am not going to talk about water infrastructure because it's a huge thing and Keagan has like 40 slides on it. But we are working on water infrastructure improvements, and it's going to be amazing, and he will tell you all about that. But I will talk about streets, because there is a lot coming for streets. We are aggressively improving our streets over the next 7 years. We have a whole plan listed out. If you want to know which streets are going to be repaired as in maybe what year, I can find that in the plan and tell you. Please reach out to me. I'm not going to publish that one online because it's a huge document, but in the next year or two, or in the next couple of years, we already started the Iowa DOT already started patching on Highway 146. You all have probably seen it if you've gone out to Walmart. I'm really sorry, that one's not us. And then they're going to do an asphalt overlay and a 4 to 3 lane conversion on that highway in the summertime. It's also going to be paired with a lot of underground work, whether that's water, sewer. We're also expanding the sidewalks and the bike trail and some of the lighting out there as well. So there's some city involvement in that project to make the highway more user-friendly for pedestrians, for bikers, and to make sure that it's well lit and easily usable. But the DOT is doing the road work because it's their road. And then on 16th Avenue, we're partnering with the county and the railroad to expand that, put in curbs and gutters, and expand it so it's a little bit easier to walk on, and you don't hit skateboarders, bikers, and walkers along that road. And I think that there will also be some lighting upgrades along there too. And then next summer, we are completely redoing 4th Avenue between Park and East Street. It will be inconvenient, but it'll be beautiful when it's done. It'll be similar to, what was the other road that was like that we just did? Yes, that one, the other part of 4th Avenue that just got finished. So it'll be a whole reconstruction. It will be beautiful when it's done. It will be inconvenient, but again, you'll have a very lovely new street when it's over with. And then the streets surrounding the water plant, once we're done with all of that construction, those are going to be a priority to get fixed around the water plant in Mayflower so that they're not all gritty and gross and beat up from all of the construction work that's been happening over the last few years. Emergency preparedness and public safety was our other focus for the strategic plan. We have had some interesting things happening already, and we will be doing some more things moving forward. The police department just announced today that they got their accreditation for the CALEA law enforcement accreditation, which is a really big deal. They went through all of their policies and procedures and also their building, basically word by word to make sure that they met national standards and refined them and updated them so that they meet national standards. There are only 13 communities in Iowa who have this accreditation, so it's kind of a big deal. And it's to make sure that our police department is up to standard and is following regulations and procedures that are across the board, nationally recognized and across the board. Our fire department and EMS team have also expanded. We're now up to 8 full-time and 1 part-time certified paramedic, which is amazing because once they get to certified paramedic level, they can provide what's called advanced life support instead of basic life support. So as opposed to doing CPR, they can also do, I lost it. They can do IVs, they can administer drugs, they can do things that they wouldn't be able to do if they were basic EMS staff. And then we're also working with Powesheik County Emergency Management to update all of our emergency procedures and plans across the board. The other fun projects that didn't quite fit into the strategic plan that we've been working on in the last year, we got a new billboard. I don't know if anybody's been on I-80 and seen this. Actually, we got 2 new billboards, thanks to Latitude. They did an excellent job installing it, and we had a local artist do the graphic design for it. It was a really exciting project. Really happy to see something fresh and clean that sort of shows off the whimsy and fun of Grinnell. We worked on a mural, a community mural, under the underpass on Highway 6. And then this other picture right here is one of the guys at the who's manufacturing the Veterans Monument. That piece of steel will be in Central Park next summer as part of the Veterans Monument construction in Central Park. And as always, if you guys want to stay connected and hear about anything that's going on in the city, there are a lot of different ways to do that. The city's website at grinnelliowa.gov, you can sign up for text or email notifications and on pretty much any news that you want, whether that's snow emergencies or street closures or water main breaks, anything like that. Peggy does an excellent job at the Grinnell Herald Register. She publishes city council recaps. She calls us all the time and talks to us about everything and asks us all the questions, so she's very thorough and very, very good. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, you can read it in the library. And then on KGRN, we have a 15-minute program once a week on Friday that airs on Friday mornings at 8:30 or at 4:30 in the afternoon. And that's just a 15-minute segment where we bring community partners to talk about the projects that they're working on and basically what's going on in town. And then we also post everything to our city Facebook page if you have Facebook. So, any questions? That was fast and furious, I'm sorry. Yes.
I have lost a term too, so I'm sympathetic. But economically, are you looking at things like places that do AI development? They use lots of land.
I don't know that that's one of our priorities for expansion. They use a lot of land and they use a lot of water. I think that if there was something that was sustainable that we could fit in with our current infrastructure, it might be something worth negotiating. But I don't think that that's where we're looking. In particular, because those don't tend to bring a lot of jobs, and that's when we're looking at expansion and economic development. We want more workforce in Grinnell, and less space taken up by buildings and infrastructure and computers and things like that.
The downtown assessment tab mentioned something about gaps in the business mix.
Mm-hmm.
What opportunities are you looking at in that regard?
Yes, I forgot to touch on that one. Thank you. So what they identified, they had also done a survey of the community to see what kind of businesses they wanted downtown. And one of the things that rose to the top was something that was indoor recreation focused or family focused. So whether that be an arcade or some sort of like indoor board game cafe, or something that was a draw to people of all ages that could be inside doing something. So we haven't entirely figured out what that would be, but it's something we're keeping an eye out for. And then there's also, everybody always wants more restaurants, so there's more restaurants, but I don't know how aggressively we're going to pursue that one. We do know that there is probably going to be a restaurant opening in the new development by McNally's once that's completed. So they're planning on building out a retail space and a restaurant space in that main floor. So not entirely sure, but there were a lot of suggestions. We haven't quite picked out what our top interest is. It was very varied.
Adrienne, I have a question. You mentioned the housing needs assessment.
Yes.
I had 2 people over the weekend say to me, do we really need more housing? Can you talk a little bit about so the past assessment, and then how much of that we've actually fulfilled, and then why a new one?
So a healthy vacancy rate is considered 7%. So 7% of your housing stock is empty. So that way, when people move into your community, not everything fits for everyone, right? I live in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom duplex with my offspring and our cat. It's 1,200 square feet. It works really well for us because I'm a full-grown human and they're like not quite full-grown humans. If there were 4 almost full-grown humans in that house, it would be catastrophic. And I rue the day that we get food poisoning. We all get food poisoning at the same time, because that would also be catastrophic. But so not every dwelling fits for every household, and so you need to be able to have options in order to be of interest to people. You can go to Des Moines or to Iowa City and you can look at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment or a townhouse or a cottage or a bungalow, or in all of these different types of neighborhoods, right? Or you can get, not everybody wants to take care of a 120-year-old house the way that for some reason do. Some people want new construction, some people like mid-century modern. So being able to have a wide variety of housing to fit a wide variety of households is really important. And so like I said, what they consider nationally a healthy vacancy rate is 7%. We've been hovering around 3 to 4% for the last 15, 20 years. So when people come to Grinnell, there are not options. When I moved to Grinnell, I had 2 apartments that I got to look at that were open and available. And that's not super great because one of them ended up working and one of them was not an option. And then I rented that apartment for 3 years before my house became available, and it was perfect and it worked out. There are a lot of people that doesn't work for. So being able to have a variety of dwelling units that are open and available to people that could fit their needs is really important. Did that answer your question, Sarah? Okay.
A new one coming up soon, because I feel like how old was the last one?
So the last one was 5 years old. Thank you for that, because I was going to mention it. The last one was 5 years old, and it seems super wasteful to be like, well, we just finished this 5 years ago. The data changes a lot over 5 years. In 5 years, we've added probably, I think, 20 new housing units, and our population has also increased slightly. So those are reasons to update it. But also, in order to qualify for most state grants and tax credits, you have to have a housing assessment that's relevant and done within the last 5 years. So when we're looking at developing new properties or rehabbing historic buildings, and we want to go after tax credits like workforce housing tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, historic preservation tax credits, any of those types of programs, one of the requirements to even qualify for any of that funding is to have a housing study that's been done in the last 5 years, just to make sure that it's accurate and actually needed in your community.
Could you give a brief update on the project up on 11th Avenue by the high school?
Absolutely. So the twin homes that are along 11th Avenue are coming along. it was kind of interesting. It was not interesting. It was kind of frustrating the way that construction was progressing with those over the summer. They were doing 2 different projects at the same time, so they were working on the ones here, and then when the weather here got bad, they went to Clear Lake and worked on ones there, and then sort of disappeared. So they have come back, and one of those buildings will actually be closed in and have heat, and they're going to have it complete. They're going to work on it over the winter and have it complete, hopefully in the spring. And then the other side of that, the Scout subdivision side, where the cul-de-sac is, has almost all of the infrastructure in place now, and we've started selling off some of those lots to local contractors who will be building houses on them. So it's moving forward. I know that it doesn't look like it is, but it is.
So I have 2 questions. One, affordability. You didn't address affordability in the housing. And the second one is, I've heard rumblings that like Grinnell has become a low-income community, and like, is that a positive move forward?
I don't know that Grinnell has become a low-income community. When I moved here, the only frame of reference I have is when I moved here, there were about 64% of our local kids who were on free and reduced lunches, and that statistic has not actually changed very much in 12 years. I think that everybody deserves the right to live where they want to live. I don't know that we're doing anything to attract one demographic over another. So I can't really address that one. I don't think there's a problem if we have a number of people who are low income. Everybody deserves the right to have housing. And then as far as low income, affordability as far as housing goes, the more housing that's available, the market will shift. If you get more, because there are so few vacancies and so few availabilities, people are willing to pay incredibly high rents for those spaces. If there are more available, then the rent prices will adjust accordingly. Anybody else? All right, in that case, I will hand it over to Jordan, who's going to talk about lakes restoration and parks.
Hello, everyone. Jordan Allsup, Parks and Recreation Director. Been with the city almost 11 years now, 8 years, close to 8 years in this role. And what I'm going to primarily talk about today is our Master Park and Recreation Plan that was just completed a couple months ago. I think the City Council approved that in September. And we are getting right along with some of the priorities that were laid out by the architectural firm that we hired as consultants. Throughout the process, this document, I'm just doing a Cliff Notes version for you. It's about 130 some pages. And those are the chapters that are kind of laid out with discovery, the actual plan for every single city park in Grinnell, and then the implementation with the strategies and the priorities within that plan. And how we kind of got there through the discovery, the things that were founded through community profiling and demographics were things such as accommodating aging population here in Grinnell. So it kind of lines out how we can hit that point with expanded accessibility, more passive recreation opportunities for that demographic, enhanced senior amenities within our parks such as like pickleball courts, shuffleboard, bocce ball, and then promoting wellness through partnerships with other entities in town. Another thing would be serving the college students and the younger adults that would founded in our demographic work here by adding active spaces such as disc golf and multi-use fields, gathering spots, which include like Wi-Fi shelters, which would be something that would be new for us here. Improving connectivity, which is a humongous theme throughout the plan, which would be linking campus parks and then neighborhoods to those spaces, and designing flexible green spaces. Supporting families and working class households is another thing that was founded through the demographic discovery portion of the plan. So we want to ensure that there's equity within all of our parks. So from the north end of town through the south end of town, to make sure that each neighborhood has a park that is worth congregating and going to. Adding family amenities such as playgrounds, splash pads, and picnic areas is a thing that was founded there. Expanding programming, so affordable after-school and summer options for kids and families. And then the whole theme that you'll kind of see is connectivity, so improving access, so safe walking and biking routes to parks. Throughout the plan, there's a core thing about embracing cultural diversity as well. So involving underrepresented groups to reflect diverse needs and traditions when we go through our projects and implementing them. And then celebrating diversity with food events, cultural markets, and then designing inclusivity. So like multilingual signs, meaningful landscape, public art that kind of goes to multiple generations. And then leveraging educational assets. So when I get talking about the kind of like priorities with like Arbor Lake and trails and stuff like that, so creating like natural education areas along the trails and stuff like that, and involving students and faculty in volunteer programs. So like when we talked about collaboration and partnerships, that would be one thing that we would seek out to do for programming. And then some STEAM-inspired plays, so science and art elements to spark curiosity and learning. Throughout the discovery chapter in the master plan, it talked about the inventory of our existing parks and our facilities, and then what they kind of founded. So we have plenty of open spaces that have a wide variety of different uses, from sports, natural areas, community and neighborhood parks. We have a privately managed recreation here in town with Orange Park that was founded. Obviously, throughout it plays a big role in our parks and recreation system. Trails and connectivity. Even though that the community members want more of this stuff, we do have a mixed shared use of paths and park trails and sidewalk systems into our parks. And then they talk about, expanding off of that. And then in their conclusion in the discovery, our parks, trails, and open spaces support wellness, community, and nature. We have a strong foundation with diverse amenities. And then we have some pretty good opportunities to have better connectivity, like I've kind of mentioned, upgrade our existing facilities, improve accessibility, and equity inclusion should guide our next phase of our park planning. And then the discovery chapter is a pretty long one, by the way. And right here you can kind of see our community needs assessment. So this was all of our public engagement, which would have been through community survey, focus group conversations, community open houses that we had did. And so kind of the key priorities people had kind of seen throughout that: expanded and upgraded athletic spaces. A new indoor recreation center was mentioned quite a bit throughout our in community engagement. And then sustain the youth and adult programming, have more flexible event spaces, and then enhance staffing and operations as we put those practices into place when we're doing these projects. Themes from our public engagement that was noted was facilities and infrastructure. People like clean, modern restrooms and trails and shelters. Indoor recreation and GARC. So, even before we kind of had the transition there with the Orange Park and the school district, throughout our community input, there was a lot of talk about people wanting a centralized hub with, multiple different facets for an indoor recreation center. Trails and connectivity was high up there. And then as you can see, nature and stewardship. We found that a lot of people are interested in nature and want to be one with nature, and that is a consistent theme in a lot of the park designs that are in this plan. So the plan, each park in this document has a plan, but some of them are prioritized over others. And then there are 6 guiding principles that went into the consultant's design. Parks for everyone, so making sure we have safe, welcoming, and accessible for all people. Connecting people to places, so with trails, sidewalks, making sure that people are able to walk out their front door and take a sidewalk to a park. Supporting families and community, caring for nature, so Restoring natural or native vegetation, expand natural trails is a big thing in the plan. And then smart, sustainable growth. So when we're looking at these amenities, we want to have data-driven investments and partnerships when we make those decisions. And then fun all year long. People made it a point that they want to be able to recreate and enjoy spaces in the wintertime, which is almost 6 months of the year here in Iowa. So implementation, this is probably the, everyone wants to get to this point in the plan. So this chapter kind of lines out how we will get there as a funding perspective and stuff with projects. So we have park master plan implementation in our capital improvement plan over the next several years. And then we will fund this through a mix of local budgets, bonds, impact fees, grants, public-private partnerships, kind of anywhere that we can get there. And so with that, there's a chapter in there that lines out, and it kind of gives you how the capital improvement plan will line up over the next 5 to 10 years. And then there's an action plan in there that kind of tells you who the leadership is, who our funding sources are. So, and I can kind of get into that with a few of the first projects there with the funding. And then project prioritization. So it lines it up there perfectly for my department when I go to my board and can go off of, what project we want to move forward. It needs to align with the guiding principles that was just shown, promote safety, wellness, and ADA access, and we're leveraging partnerships and external funding, respond to community demands and equity needs, and then feasible phase high impact projects and sustainable low maintenance designs, which is always great. So this is the fun part of it. So the priority plan. So priority number 1 in the plan is Arbor Lake. And the cool thing is that we're already in the process. We've hired an engineering firm, Houston Engineering, Inc., for restoration on this body of water in partnership with the Iowa DNR. So we're in process with that now. They'll be engineering this project. So when I say project, it would just be the lake and the watershed stuff. And then the park amenities would come in a little bit later. Over the next 12 months, there'll be engineering. We'll have some open houses on some design and stuff like that. But it's basically, we need to dredge that body of water. There's 50,000 cubic yards of sediment in there. And it hasn't been dredged since the mid-'70s. And so, a lake generally in Iowa goes about 50 years before you need to dredge it again. So we're at that, and we want to make sure that it is a viable recreational space for the community for many, many years to come. And so there'll be key features that we put in there. So an idea would be to pave the trail all the way around the lake, have ADA access to all the fishing jetties, and then kind of the hub of the park right here would be what is called in the plan the Commons, which has a day lodge and play spaces and natural play for the kids. You'll see like the estimated cost is around 6.8 to 7.2 million. It's about 6 of it's going to come on the lake restoration part of it. So, but that would be priority 1, which also leads into priority number 2, which would be Lake Nyanza at Miller Park. So Lake Nyanza is actually within the watershed of Arbor Lake. So to do the project at Arbor Lake, we have to include Nyanza as well. So that current engineering that we're doing on Arbor Lake also includes Lake Nyanza at Miller Park. Right now, what is suggested is to turn that body of water into possibly a natural wetland, depending on what the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers lets us do with this. But this body of water was originally just to fill the steam engines on the railroad. So it was never kind of meant to be a recreational body of water. So it has a mean average depth about 2.5 feet, and there is 50,000 cubic yards of sediment in that one as well. So, and if everyone knows Miller Park is a little bit landlocked, so which causes a little bit of issues if you wanted to do a mechanical dredging. But we're in the process of those 2 projects. And then priority number 3 is actually Davis Park, which is the land at Davis School. We are actually under contract with design right now with the firm that actually did the master parks plan. And over the next few months, we will probably be publicizing what an actual design of this space right here is. And the hope is, if everything goes as planned, we could be making significant construction on that next year, at the end of next year. But we will cross our fingers. Priority 4, Central Park, which is going on right now, is the Veterans Memorial Monument. So, and Adrienne touched base a little bit on that. That'll be coming up next summer, and it's in process right now. Number 5 is a feasibility study on a new recreation and wellness center. So kind of how I mentioned that people are wanting a one-stop shop for the recreational needs and spaces to go into the winter. The first step would be doing a feasibility study to figure out how we'd be able to fund it, operate it, where it could even go. So the first thing we would do is we would contract a firm to be able to do this feasibility study for us. And then piggybacking off that would be a soccer complex feasibility study as well. Soccer, it continues to be a very popular sport nationally and is growing in Grinnell. We have roughly over 300 and some kids that play youth soccer in Grinnell. So with the space's impact with the new elementary school, we will hopefully find a new space to keep growing this sport in the future. Merrill Park is in there for number 7. So when you see the estimated cost here, that's actually talking about this end of the park, so the west side. The ideas there would be actually to remove the ball field and create that as a multi-use green space so it could be used for a variety of different activities while also keeping the infield layout with the backstop so people could still use that as a practice space if they would want to. Also would consolidate the playground on the western side so it's not split anymore. And then there would be natural art in the center circle with kind of a natural landscape on the eastern side of the park. Priority 8 would be Summer Street Park. And the priority in there would actually be to update the existing playground and expand it. And then cleaning up the creek and making like a creek walk and a creek restoration project down there in the future. 8 would be Bailey Park. The big thing there would be replacing the shelter and restroom, which we did this summer. So there is a new shelter restroom at that area, and we have orientated it just like that plan says. So in the future, when we are expanding sidewalk in the neighborhood, we can go in there and make a loop trail that connects with that shelter throughout the entire park to open that space up. Expansion of the skate park is another priority there. That has been open now since 2019, and I will tell you that it is used almost every single day, and during the summertime there is tons of kids there. It's probably one of the most popular park amenities that we have. The aquatic center is priority number 10, and with the priorities there would be mainly expanding the parking and creating a drop-off zone, and then there is expanding the bathhouse for staffing considerations, and then an idea of theirs would be implementing a splash pad as a new amenity at the aquatic center, which I can't guarantee that will happen anytime in the future. And then the final priority would be updating our signage and wayfinding master plan. And when we talk about implementing these parks projects, signage is the big thing to make sure people know where they're going. We have a brand, so doing a master plan on what that brand could look like will set us up in the future when we knock off park by park and when we're updating the signage so it's consistent throughout our parks and recreation system. Any questions?
What is the timetable as you move down these 11 priorities? So
Yes.
do we finish number 1 first before we move on to anything else?
So 1 through 4 are actually all in motion. I will say 1 and 2 will probably take up a lot of our time over the next 5 years. Those projects, when we're talking restoring bodies of water, take on average from just from the start of construction about 3 years. And we're still in the planning phase of it. So that'll eat up a lot of our time. And then we could probably sprinkle in some of the smaller ones in there, like the feasibility studies, just because those are more plans and more studies. They don't take a lot of manpower to do those. But after that, they're out into the future, probably 7, 8, 10, 15 years for some of those, for sure.
How did you define cultural diversity as it pertains to Grinnell? Is that done by percentages, different ethnic
Yeah, so
groups?
when they did their demographic research and talking with the focus groups of the people in the community, the trends of our community, parks and recreation, that's how that they had determined that.
How and where do you dispose of 50,000 cubic yards of silt?
That's a good question. So, to get to the point that we are with that project, I've already been working on it for about 4 years now. So we did a feasibility study on just the lakes a couple years ago, and with Arbor Lake, there is 4 locations determined in that feasibility study where we would put that, and throughout this 12 months of engineering, they will narrow that down on which of those spaces will work. 3 of those spaces are on public property at Arbor Lake. One of those is on private property, which I don't think we would need to entertain. But we do know that we'll be doing a mechanical dredging at Arbor Lake and have to dispose of that. Lake Nyanza, we don't know for sure yet. But the cool thing is about that sediment is they will take that sediment on those locations and will shape it in a utilize topography, so that way we can build trails and natural areas through there that people can enjoy that part of the park as well.
Back to along the lines of the timeline, Jordan.
Yeah.
I think I saw that if someone wanted to know, where we're at, what's going on, the Parks and Rec committee or Parks and Rec, is that the one?
Yep.
I mean, your
Parks and
office is
Recreation
really
Board.
leading that charge, and is that where, if people wanted to know as this project moves forward, is that where you would go to learn more as things? I mean, besides the bucket courses here, how would you know, like that? Where we're at with this timeline and where things are going.
Yeah. So the Parks and Recreation Board meets once a month on the second Monday. So those are public meetings and open to the public, so that's a good space to learn. They can reach out to me to kind of see where we're at. My email and everything and my phone number is up on the city's website. And then, as these projects start getting knocked off one by one, there'll be open houses. I assume with the Lake Restoration Project, we'll probably have a portion on the city's website that gives information about what's going on. But there'll be plenty of opportunities for people to be informed.
We walk around Arbor Lake quite often, and a couple of years ago, didn't we see you out on the water?
Wasn't me on the water, but it was the engineering firm that we've hired that's doing all the work right now. So, yeah, they have been out on the water taking sediment samples, water samples, you name it, to be able to know what is going on under the surface. All right. Thank you.
Is mic working? All right. I'm Keagan. I think the last time I was here, we got into nitty-gritty details and numbers associated with all of our water improvement projects. This time I have a little bit of that and a lot more pictures, so we'll kind of do a show and tell. If if you have questions while I'm speaking, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll come to you. That way we can do them as you think of it. Sound good? First project I wanted to mention is actually, for all intents and purposes, it's complete, a raw transmission main project. So this was the piping that carries water from our wells to our treatment plant. Some of it was in sort of bad condition, some of it was fine, but we wanted to make sure that we had this replaced in preparation for the new water treatment plant. We wanted to increase resiliency, make sure that everything was super reliable. Construct out of Ames and Marshalltown did this project for us. And did a really great job. Great crew to work with. I think there was about 5,500 feet of pipe put in. That was raw and treated water main east of East Street along First Avenue. That was kind of a problem area. We were going to be there anyway, so we went ahead and took care of that. This is a blown up photo of the route. So here at the upper left, we have the water treatment plant. We followed Main Street down, went down First Avenue to well 8, which is clear over here. I don't know which button it is. It does have a laser. This was kind of at the beginning of the project. This piping is right outside the current water treatment plant. As you can see, there was a lot to dig around, a lot of new stuff to incorporate into the new stuff. They did a great job here. This photo kind of illustrates the process of laying that water main. Dig a big trench, get it down to the right elevation, install the pipe, wrap the metal parts with plastic to keep the soil from contact. That helps to inhibit corrosion. Things like that. This orange tube is going to be a duct for our fiber communication lines that we're going to use to communicate with our wells and also with our new water tower. That our control wiring currently is based on telephone lines, which are generally reliable. But if we have, say, a derecho or an ice storm or anything like that, it can really mess up stuff. So we're not getting signals from our wells or from our water tower, and we have to go do things manually, which is not ideal when you're working on other things during a disaster. So this will be underground, super reliable. Like I was saying before, we lay that pipe down, bed it in rock, and then they kind of backfilled it as we went. This is ideal for when we're installing water mains because it impacts people's driveways less, and creates less safety concerns if you're filling up as you go. Sometimes that doesn't happen on projects, but these guys did a really great job of doing that. You can see here we have a gas service and a water service. We encountered plenty of that along the way. This is the end of the raw water main project at well 8, which is inside this fenced area here. We tied on to the existing piping. There will be some more work done with this along with the water treatment plant project too. So some of this will be dug up again here within the next year. Next project is well number 10.
Before we move on, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
So that's a lot of digging that you've done and an incredible amount of work. How long would ideally all that last? I mean, I know you just talked about you're going to redig and just a little in about a year, but all that piping and then the fiber that you laid as well. How many years do you think that will go, or should?
The industry says that plastic pipe should last about 100 years. We have cast iron pipes that were put in, turn of the last century that are still serving the community. So plastic's supposed to last longer than that. So should be good for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well 10. Well 10 should be complete within the next month. So this has not gone exactly according to plan. The timeline has been extended a few different times as we've run into issues. The hole is drilled, the well is cased, everything is in there as it's supposed to be. It's just taking a lot longer. They should be test pumping this well tomorrow evening or Friday, and that's kind of the final piece of this phase of the puzzle. It's about 2,300 feet deep. Our pump will be sitting at about 640 feet. It's supposed to produce 1,200 gallons per minute, and during the last testing we were able to do, it was producing 1,480 gallons per minute, so we're good there. This picture is kind of small, but you can see the well drilling rig that they set up initially on site. This was before really any major water treatment plant work started. Here's a little closer view when they started drilling the well. This is called a slurry pit. So the well drilling process actually uses air and water to lift the cuttings from the bottom of the hole. They're not physically removing it. There's a drill bit that rotates and crushes whatever substrate they're going through, generally rock, into little pieces. The center of the bit and the piping that going all the way up to the drill rig is hollow. So they force air and water down to the bottom, and the air carries everything up to the top, and it goes into that slurry pit for removal later. Kind of an interesting process. And the well drillers use all sorts of agents to make the water a certain density, to lift out different types of rock. It's all much more complicated than what I understand, but I have sort of a surface value understanding of that. Pretty interesting process. Well 10 is at Broad Street and 2nd Avenue, right in front of the new treatment plant. Yep. This is what we call a pitless adapter. This is the very top of the well structure. So our pump and well pipe will go down the tube, and it's supported at the top by some brackets on the inside of this structure. The pump and the well tube kind of interface with this pipe. That's the outlet, and this will go around the corner of the building and into the treatment process. Next one is the water tower. We've probably all seen the pedestal out on East Street, south of Ogan Avenue. This one's going really well. The concrete pouring process was really neat. I've got some good pictures of that. The pedestal was done in September. They're starting to weld on the tank portion now. They're hoping to lift up the tank in February, but I'm not sure they're familiar with February weather. Caldwell's from Kentucky. They build tanks everywhere. I think they'll be pushing it to get that done before spring, but we will see. This is supposed to be online in August of next year. So initially, they cleared a little bit of land. They brought in a crane with a huge auger, and they drilled piers 75 foot deep, filled them with grout and rebar to create the deep foundations for the water tower. You can see the rebar sticking out here. There's around 52 of these piers that were drilled in. It only took about 20 minutes to do each one. It was a pretty interesting process. So these go all the way around the circumference of this hole here. And then the next step, they formed up a big concrete donut around the top of those. I want to say this was about 75 yards of concrete, but it could be more than that. I can't remember off the top of my head. These rebars here are reinforcement for around the garage door and also the walk door that will be installed in the pedestal later. So there's that footing completed. And here's the beginning of forming for those rings that built that pedestal up. Pretty cool process. In the center here, they have what they call their platform. It actually is supported by the interior forms while they're going up. So this platform travels with them as they're working. So, oops. But this is the inside of the form, and then the outside will go around. They go up 3 or 4 courses, they pour a few, and then they leapfrog the forms. And then that platform climbs with them. Pretty interesting. So here they are pouring. Every bit of that concrete was pumped through a truck like this. This is the reinforcing steel that they use. They have little cranes that rotate around so they can lift materials up to the top. So here we see the pedestals getting close to being completed, and they've moved in forms for pouring the dome that is at the top of the pedestal. That actually forms the bottom of the tank. There's no water inside of this structure. Aside from a few pipes, it will be open all the way to the top. We'll use this for maybe a little bit of storage. We'll have some controls inside of here, and that'll be about it. This is a picture of the final pour of the pedestal. And then over here, they've started moving in steel. This was just a couple of weeks ago. They've progressed a little further now, but I haven't had a chance to take a recent picture. A rendering of what it will look like in the end. We're planning on having 2 logos on the tank so that one can face generally northwest and the other can face generally southwest, so you can see it coming and going from town from just about anywhere. The water treatment plant is well underway. We're going to, let's see, we should be able to start using water from the treatment plant next December. Pretty exciting. I'm ready for that. I'm sure you all are too. We're going to be using a nanofiltration treatment process, which is very similar to reverse osmosis, which is basically high pressure water forced through a filter to remove anything other than water. Everything is going basically not according to plan, but we're on track. We've had a couple of hiccups, but you'll have that on a big job like that. Day 1, we'll be able to produce 2.1 million gallons of treated water in a day. Currently, we only go through about 1 million. So we have plenty of excess capacity if industry were to come to town and the population were to grow. But the treatment units that are going to be installed day 1 will be able to be expanded to about 2.6 million gallons a day by just adding a few more pressure vessels. So we have plenty of flexibility there. On the right here is the water quality factors that we kind of used in designing the treatment plant. We got a lot of these numbers from a pilot study, which we basically took a miniature treatment plant, set it up beside the existing one, and ran water through it to see what would happen. So we can see this column is the water that we were feeding to the pilot unit, and then this is what we got out at the end. So some of these parameters are kind of targets. Let me see what I'm looking at here. So 119. This is 119 milligrams per liter of hardness. Currently, we're putting out about 340, which I'm sure you've noticed. This equates to about 7 grains per gallon. So that's our goal with this, is reducing hardness, reducing iron, reducing manganese, and just kind of so we can produce better quality water. And we proved that the treatment system that we selected works very well at doing that. This first picture is taken from the existing water tower after a decent amount of dirt work had been done, and the well is well underway there. This is the foundation work for our clear well, our finished water clear well, forming up for the pipe trench where most of our plumbing will come in to our treatment units in the plant. Here we've got some building footings, pipe trench, getting ready for concrete. There's the pipe trench a little bit more built. This is some piping that goes in between the treatment plant and our clear well. These are where our high service pumps will live. We'll use a vertical pump that actually sits inside of the steel casing. The motor will be up here. It'll pull water in from the clear well and push it out into the distribution system and to the tower. This next part is pretty exciting for me. This is one of the coolest construction procedures that I've ever seen before. And maybe I'm weird, but I think it's pretty cool. So this is part of building our clear well tank there. It's a 300,000 gallon, actually 328,000 gallon precast concrete tank. And what I took that to mean was that they were going to ship in big concrete panels and set them up. What they do here is actually they form and pour them on site. It's super efficient, and there's no wasted effort. It was really neat. So each of these is a form. These are for a wall panel. This is for a roof panel. They had 2 of each type of form there, right on site. And they would pour a layer, put a piece of plastic over it, and move the form up and pour another layer. They poured every piece of that into those 4 forms that were there, and then they picked it with the crane and set them all up in one day. This is the foundation that we saw from the tower earlier. That big hole now has a foundation. And then, I think it was on a Friday, they began setting up the panels. This center part supports the roof until they get everything secured together. Relatively thin concrete with a steel skin on the outside. They have sort of a junction that they put in between the panels, and they grout between it. Then they laid the roof panels on. One thing I don't have a picture of is that what gives this tank strength is a high tensile wire wrap around it. There's 3 layers of high tensile wire around that thing. And then it is, there's concrete sprayed on the outside of it to hold it all together, and then it's painted. This is the interior inspection that we were doing to make sure everything was up to snuff. It really echoes in there. So here it is. After, I don't think this is final concrete spraying. We can kind of see a little bit of the wire through here. And then it's been coated, and it rained on the mud, so it made it look nasty on the side. But we'll have that cleaned up when she's finished. And this is what the building currently looks like from the southeast corner. So obviously this brick is done here. They've actually completed the brick on the north side. They're working on the west side. I would expect them to be done with this brick, all its exterior brick, within the next 3 weeks. A lot of the interior block walls are completed. The floors are poured. They're putting in ceiling girders so that they can get the roof on and get that closed up. Yes, sir. The black here. The red and the black and the green. Yep. So the brick is going to be installed over that black as well. This black is just an air and vapor membrane that's painted onto the concrete blocks. So they put the bricks on the outside of that. The brick will be all the way around. Yep. So they're hoping to get the roof on so they can get it closed up and do interior work during the wintertime. And they're working feverishly to get that done, and I don't blame them. I think that's the end of my pictures on the water plant. Anybody have anything on the water plant? I have a few more slides on another project, but yes. No. Nope, everything will be inside. There's small pumps on the treatment units, and then we'll have 3 high service pumps. So The noise that you can hear standing outside of the current treatment plant will probably be all that there is.
And when they don't get the mic, would you repeat the question? Otherwise, it won't get recorded.
I sure can. He asked about how much noise there would be associated with the new treatment plant, and I said it would probably be similar to the current one, which is not a whole lot on the outside.
Can you tell us what day one will look like for us on a user, the user end? Will there be a time, like how do you shift from what we're doing to the new?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for us?
We'll probably be doing some hydrant flushing during that time. We're going to come online after our usual hydrant flushing time, but I think that when we start putting that new water into the system, we'll go out to far-reaching areas and flush to try and change over the water, so to speak. Yeah. Yep.
To the mic. Hold on.
So there are two wells from 8 and 10, and that's where water is taken from the ground, from the aquifer,
Yes.
correct? And then pumped to the wastewater treatment plant, and then what comes out goes to the tower, correct?
Yep, it goes to the tower and the rest of the distribution system.
Why
Same
did
way.
why did we need two wells?
We
There's
actually-
one right beside it.
Yep, we actually have well 6, 7, 8, 9, and now 10. So we have more than one well so that we have resiliency. Things break down, and well rehabilitation work is a lengthy process, very expensive. So if we have redundancy, we have resiliency. We can continue to provide water. If
And
something
all
breaks
those
down.
wells will still be functioning.
Well number 6 is going to be retired and abandoned, but we will still have 7, 8, 9, and 10 in service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. Why another tower, water tower?
The current tower is a little over 100 years old. It has served the community for a long time. A tower can work indefinitely if you take care of it, and it has been rehabilitated a few times, like I said. But it's too small. We should have at least 1 million gallons, 1.2 million gallons ready to be used at any moment in time. She asked if the old tower will come down or still be used. We're planning on using it for the near future. Until it needs something major, it's going to stay.
Are there any local or regional challenges to users who are using the same aquifer? Is that aquifer in good shape for a long time?
We're okay for now, but there are concerns about using the Jordan aquifer and any aquifer. In the Des Moines area, in Cedar Rapids, there's a lot of large industries that are pulling huge quantities of water out of that, and it's being monitored closely by the DNR. There is kind of it's not a ceiling, but I guess a basement level that if we hit that, then we have to start working on conserving water. We're quite a ways away from that. But I think over the entirety of the Jordan aquifer, levels are being reduced, but nothing that we'll have to worry about in the near future. But it's definitely on the forefront of everybody's mind in the water industry. Unfortunately, here, there's not really another option.
I thought it was interesting that they dig this well down over 2,000 feet, and when they open it up, the pressure of the aquifer puts that water all the way up to about 600 feet. So the pump only has to go down 600 feet to reach the aquifer because of the pressure of the aquifer pushes it up that pipe.
Yep. Anything else? I think I'll wrap it up there. That works for everybody.
Okay, I have one more question, if you don't mind. I think it's going to be you, real quick. Sorry. Speaking of water, as someone who lives in an older neighborhood, I've been getting some letters from. Is that you? Okay. Some letters about lead pipes. Can you talk a little bit more about what what that's all about, and like what are the plans moving forward from the city regarding replacement of lead pipes. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
So I recently sent out what's called the service line material notification. It is required by the DNR and the Environmental Protection Agency. As it's kind of part of the Clean Water Act and the lead and copper rule that I provide those notifications to folks that have lead service lines, galvanized service lines, and service lines of unknown materials. So a quick rundown. So 1986, we had the Safe Drinking Water Act, which banned lead pipes and plumbing materials nationwide. A lot of local jurisdictions and states had banned it long prior to that, but you know, we were kind of slow to the punch there. After that, the lead and copper rule came about in, I think, 1991, and that required systems to test for lead at customer taps. And it set it set a limit of 15 parts per billion of lead in tap water. Then in 2024, we had a lead and copper rule revision and the final lead and copper rule, which reduced that level to 10 parts per billion of lead. We also had to create an inventory of service line materials in town. We're required to send notifications to people that have those lead, galvanized, or unknown service lines. And then we also have to put together a plan for replacing lead service lines in town. So we're doing all of those things right now too, and those notifications are part of that. So that's just information for those folks whose service lines I know about. There's no action required at this time. I would just say, you know, if you have a lead service line, you're welcome to replace it. We are working on a plan to replace some in the south part of town and some in the north part of town, still in the planning phases, hoping to kind of start the ball rolling on that next construction season.
So I am one that lives in that southwest part of town, and I know that I have lead pipe. So I'm assuming that if the new water isn't going to be online until December 26th, that it's still safe to drink our water. I mean, like with the elevated lead and radium or whatever else is in our water. I mean, it's safe, right?
Yeah, there's no elevated lead in the water. The lead comes from service lines and interior plumbing materials. But we treat the water. Part of that lead and copper rule is also corrosion control. So we apply chemicals to the water that keep the service line materials from corroding, and also sequester iron and manganese as well. And we also do testing. We do 20 taps every year. We were doing 40 taps twice a year when we changed our treatment scheme at the plant. But now we're doing 20 taps once a year like we used to. And we've always been well within parameters on those tests.
So do you anticipate the help you're going to get grant-wise or whatever to help replace the lead lines? Do you hope that that is soon, like next year?
Yes.
Yep.
The south part of Grinnell actually qualifies for state revolving fund loans, which are 40% forgivable and 0% interest. So that's kind of what we're focusing on right now, is getting that stuff going.
Okay, well, will you help me thank City of Grinnell for being here today, everyone, even though Adrienne left. Thank you so much. Maybe the next bucket course is a tour of the water treatment plant once it comes online. We'll meet you there, and we'll have a session there. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a wonderful holiday season. Remember, this Friday is Jingle Bell Holiday downtown Grinnell, so plan to enjoy the downtown area starting at 5 o'clock. And then I will see you in 2026. Please reach out if you have ideas for programming. But I thank you all for coming to these sessions every week, and I look forward to seeing you all in February. Take care.